bow. Okay, Lily, what's the difference in the arrow? Are they made out of anything different? No. What's the difference? Not yet. No, arrowhead's going to be the same. Well, kind of. We'll get to that. But what do we go next? What's the next step?
Feathers.
Feathers. How many feathers for a warrior? Is accuracy important in taking your time to shoot your enemy? No. Rapid fire shooting is important, which means 2 feathers. No guide arrow, which makes the arrow go faster. Although it's not as accurate, you can get more shots off. And normally, what are they shooting into? A crowd. Through the crowd. So 2 feathers on the warrior arrow. The arrowheads are no different. They were originally stone, but later transgressed into metal from barrel hoops. The length of the arrow was also the same. Elbow, tip of the finger, plus the hand. So the arrowheads are no different. They're either stone or metal. The length of the arrow for a warrior was no different. Elbow, top of the finger, plus a hand. But as Lily said, the tip is now going to be laid in there horizontally. Horizontally? Horizontally. Because it's going to be this way, which would go through a human's ribs.
Whoa.
So there's the differences. Now, when a Plains Indian warrior went into battle, this is what he was normally equipped with. And they could be different. They could have some other things. But normally, they had their bow and about 100 arrows. They also usually carried a spear. And also, for protection, a bison hide shield. So, early in the Indian battles, usually between their own tribes, before we got involved with the white man, they would be equipped with a bow, about 100 arrows, a bison hide protective shield, and a long spear. Now, we grow up with cowboys versus Indians and watching movies and all that, but the most bloodiest fights usually came when one Indian tribe fought another. And usually if a chief was killed during the fight, it even got bloodier. So the most vicious Indian fighting usually occurred between tribes. Now that would transform to the white man later, but usually the bloodiest fighting between Plains Indian warriors was when they fought against themselves.
How big were tribes?
Oh, some massive and some smaller. I mean, your Sioux tribe was massive, your Cheyenne tribe was massive. They're all pretty good size. There wasn't a lot of small ones, Blackfeet. I mean, all kinds of different tribes. But some were more powerful than others. Okay.
Why did they fight?
Well, because they're no different than anybody else. What are they fighting for? They're fighting for spiritual areas. They're fighting for buffalo. They're fighting for the ability to be someplace. I mean, they were rivals, just like anything else. Now, I got to tell you something funny, which reminds me of me. Even though Native American warriors eventually ended up with rifles and pistols and things, either from traders or they found them or they took them from soldiers or whatever, there were many, many that still fought with conventional weapons, bow and arrow, spears. It's kind of like me. I'm an old guy, I like to lecture. I don't like group work, right? So all of a sudden group work's going to be the big thing, and so I'm going to go into battle now with all this group work. Now I'm still going to go to battle with the lecture. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So there were a lot of traditional Plains Indian warriors that even though they had access to weaponry such as rifles, pistols, etc., continued to fight with the bow and arrow spears because they knew how to use them efficiently, and some of them didn't even know how to fire or load weapons. Okay, so but as time goes on, you'll see more and more rifles, pistols, etc. that have been accumulated, used against whites in battle. Okay, now, if you were a Native American or a Plains Indian warrior, there were 2 specific ways you could prove your worth to your tribe. There were 2 specific ways that you could really prove your worth to your tribe. One way was stealing enemy supplies and horses. It's a big deal. If you return back to the Indian tribe with several horses from your enemy or supplies from your enemy, that was looked upon as a really good thing. That was a way you could really prove your worth to your tribe. is if you stole enemy supplies and horses. Another way, and probably the most prestigious way, to prove your worth to your tribe was to show bravery in the face of the enemy. To show bravery in the face of the enemy. Now, this even got to be a little bit of a game, because to show bravery in the face of the enemy, a warrior would approach an enemy, touch that enemy, and come back unharmed. Okay, so if Peyton and I were in hand-to-hand combat, so to speak, I would maybe tease her and slap her on the side of the face and then come back and laugh at her a little bit before we got into it. And it got so big of a deal, they started keeping track of this. And when you showed bravery in the face of the enemy, when you went to your enemy and touched them and came back unharmed, that was called coup. And when you kept track of how many times you did that, that became known as counting coup. And that sounds kind of silly, but that's a big deal. That was a big deal to the Native Americans. Right now, we have a Native American school near Billings, Montana, very good in basketball. The name of the school is Plenty Coup, with an S. Plenty Coup High School, named after the great chief Plenty Coup. What's that? Of Shia tribe. And he got his name because he collected plenty coup during his career. True thing, they would take that very seriously. He was a great, great warrior chief, and they named an entire community after him in a school. Now, whether Plains Indians were fighting each other or they were fighting the white man, they were really bloody battles and really were a little bit gross, because normally there would be scalping involved and mutilization involved after battles. And I mean, it wasn't unusual to see someone's arms and legs cut off, their tongue cut out, whatever. Once they had killed the enemy, they scalped them and usually mutilated them beyond recognition. Matter of fact, at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Tom Custer, George Custer's brother, was mutilated so badly that the only way they could recognize who he was a tattoo that he had on his arm. I mean, they did everything you can imagine of that. They crushed his skull flat as a pancake, split him open from top to bottom, fired arrows at him from point-blank range. That's what they did. Why did Native Americans do that? Why did they mutilate their dead and cut their limbs off and smash their face into the, like a pancake? Why did they do that kind of thing? Anybody know?
The spirit won't go back into it.
Close. They believed in the afterlife or reincarnation. And if they hampered their victim in life after they killed him, when they came back and fought him again in the afterlife, they would be missing that leg or that arm or whatever, and would put him at a disadvantage. So very, very bloody encounters between tribes and also between tribes and whites resulted in mutilization of the dead, scalping of the dead, and the Indian philosophy behind this mutilization of the dead had to do with the Indian belief of the afterlife or reincarnation, and they believed they might meet their enemies in the afterlife and wanted to put them at a disadvantage. Now, before going into the battle, the Plains Indian warrior often looked to his religion for strength. Now, I don't know, times have changed, but when I coached, we'd come in and say the Lord's Prayer before every game to give us a little bit of strength and camaraderie, and hoping that the good Lord would look over us and we wouldn't get hurt no matter if we won or lost. It was kind of a thing, I think. Has that gone away? I haven't coached for years. Do you do that before games?
Before a game, like we have them
Together? Yeah, and that kind of ended when people got offended. But anyway, you look for religion sometimes for strength. And that's what the Native Americans did. Only their God wasn't God. Their God was known as the Great Spirit. It was known as the Great Spirit. And they used to pray to the Great Spirit, hoping to have a vision to tell them what the future would hold in battle. So they would often, a chief or a warrior, would look to the Great Spirit in prayer for direction, hoping to get a vision. Anybody know what a vision is, really? It kind of is. It's a drug-induced dream. Probably the most well-known in this country was during the 60s and the LSD period, when people would take a hallucinogenic drug and then go on a trip, and you'd have really weird dreams, and then you'd come out of it. Hopefully, if it was a good dream, you'd feel good afterwards. If it was a bad dream, who knows what you might do. But they did the same thing.
Is it ayahuasca what like Native Americans will use to the,
Ayahuasca?
yeah,
I know it better as peyote.
yeah.
Yeah, peyote is, they often used peyote, smoked peyote, or sniffed in peyote, which was a pretty strong, I guess, marijuana would be the best way to put it, which would get them, as Lily said, a little bit high and make them hallucinate and have these visions. I'll give you an example. Sitting Bull had a vision the night before the Battle of Little Bighorn. And the vision was soldiers falling upside down from the sky. And he actually depicted that on hides and on a metal pot, a smashed army metal pot, which I'll tell you about later. That was his dream. He saw soldiers falling from the sky. They end up winning the Battle of Bighorn. They take that as a vision. That was a prediction of what was going to happen in the future. So the religious part of that was very, very important to them, and they always did that before they went out to battle. Okay, any questions on that at all? Okay, I'm going to treat you today with a little bit of Pawn Stars to end today.